Hello there, voltage modular people, PoohBear here, and welcome to my channel. And today we're going to do a technical overview of the poly breakout box. Yes, it is a poly to mono breakout box. It supports up to the 16 channels, which is obviously note, gate and velocity. For it to work, you've got to have at least the note or pitch and gate cabled up together. You don't need the velocity. The breakout modes actually come in several different flavors, and that's what we're going to go through, and then I'll go through the rest of the controls as well. At the moment, we can say how many output ports we want. So in this example, we're actually going to use, say, the first 8. We can obviously go up to 16 if we want to. So let's just use our first 8. And at the moment, we're also in random mode. So let me just pull down the keyboard so you can see what's going to happen. So when I hit a key on the keyboard, we get a light that lights up because it's randomly going to choose a port where it's going to go out. So I can use the same note and it would randomly choose different ports, which is really cool. Now obviously, if I was to push, say, 2 keys down and then I was to play a third key and keep playing a third key, what could happen is I could randomly select them ports, which has actually happened, and obviously when I let my key off, it closes the port off. So even though actually inside these cables these are actually live, well, because of the way it's configured, we've actually disabled it. Now there is a mode called random with honor, so that means in this particular case, now I've got myself my 2 ports open. No matter how many times I'm pressing it, it's never going to select these ports. It's going to honor them that they're already selected, and it'd randomize anything else around it. So obviously, so here I can obviously go loads, and there's them 2 ports still open. We have a round robin mode, which basically means it's going to go through each port in turn and then back to the beginning. We set up for 8 ports, so obviously we go from there back to the beginning. If it's 16, you go all the way through. Same sort of thing applies if I hold a note down, which happens to be that one there. Let's go for a few ones. So I'm going to hold that one there. Now if I hit my keys, as we come around, now when I hold that key down, that key now is actually being outputted through this port. So when I release it, it's now going to turn it off. Yeah, so that is now like disappeared. We've also got a round robin with honor. So just like before, let's just get a couple of lights going. So as I'm pressing my keys, you can see I'm going to go around, but this time it's going to skip that port and it's going to go to the next one. It's going to skip that port and go to the next one. So it's going to honor these ports that are actually lit up. Now the next 4, I think of as being designed more for a chord mode. So the first 4 are kind of one or more notes, whereas the last ones are definitely more designed more for chords, which are going to happen. And in fact, I'm going to just jump ahead and go straight towards the note low high and note high low. So in this particular case, I'm now going to hold down a chord. So I was having to hold down a 3-note chord here, and I've got myself 3 ports active, and they're active from a low to a high. So the first port will be the lowest key, then the second lowest key, then the third, and so on and so forth. So as I add more and more keys, it's just going to go down that port. Now, little things to bear in mind, and in fact, let's go from this way. Let's go do it this time this way. I'm going to hold these 3 notes down, and as you can see, this time now, this top port is this key here, then it's that second port, and that'd be the third port. Now if I was to hold down this key here, this is now just become the first port, and it's shifted the notes of these 2 ports actually down. Now it's important to understand really what's going on, because if you think about it, only this port here is theoretically getting a new gate. The rest have already got a gate open. But we do have this read trigger mode set up here. Now read trigger is more to do with envelopes. Now not all envelopes will re-trigger the envelope from the beginning. A lot of them will state on there if there's a re-trigger mode, or obviously in the documentation, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them, the case would be, if I had an envelope and I've done my attack, I've done my decay, I'm in sustain, and I'm coming down my release, if you get another gate signal, usually where you are in the release, that's where it's going to start at that level of the attack and carry on the attack. So theoretically, if you had yourself a very high sustain and a very slow attack and a very slow release, and you very, very quickly reactivated it, well, you're going to be activating it virtually at the same level as the sustain. So you're never going to really hear that envelope. The re-trigger is, it makes sure that the voltages will drop. So when the voltage is swapped between the ports, it just drops it. Just for a sample, that's all it needs. It's just a quick drop to a 0 before it goes back up again. So it's down to the envelope to be able to support re-triggering. As I say, some envelopes will actually state on it, yeah, there's a re-trigger mode. And re-trigger mode basically means, oh, when it gets a new gate, no matter where it is in that release, it's always going to re-trigger right from the beginning. So just bear that in mind. Re-triggering is not going to affect any other kind of envelopes. It just gives the opportunity if there happens to be a re-trigger mode. Now obviously the re-trigger affects everything, and the only other modes I haven't really talked about at the moment really is the low-high spread and the high-low spread. To be honest, these are very, very similar in the way that the ports work. We could have reversed the ports on the cabling, but I've done it this way as well. So this actually means if I hold a low key down, it's going to make it port 1. My next key is actually then going to be the highest key. So that's obviously the lowest key. This is going to be the highest key selected, and that goes to the furthest port, because I've got 8 ports, so it goes to port 8. The next key I select is now the second lowest, so that goes to port 2. And then obviously if I was to select another key, that's now gone down to the 7th port. Now again, the same sort of principle would apply, that if I was to hold, let's go up here, let's say I'm going to hold these 3 keys down. So this happens to be the lowest one, so that's at the top. This one here happens to be this port here, and so on and so forth. But now if I was to hold another key right down the low one, so I'm now going to put a new low one in, we've now shifted all the ports around. So, you know, this is the lowest now, this is the second lowest, and then obviously these two are actually the high ports there. But as soon as I release, we've swapped everything around, because then the middle port is now port 2 there. So we're now just sort of pushing it around. So it does shovel them around, and again, as I say, the re-trigger mode will come into effect here. Now we've got this new gate delay, and that's referring to, at the moment, there's no gates playing. So here is a new gate. This is where this new gate delay really comes into effect. So you can set it, goes from 0, so there's no delay whatsoever, and it goes up to 99 milliseconds. It's quite funny that you hear some people, they worry about if you've got like a 10 millisecond or a 20 millisecond delay. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. Most cases you can get away with it. If you're doing something like with drums or something like that, that's about the only time I'd be more concerned about the timing. But most of the time it doesn't matter. And what this actually does is, now I'm here, there's no gates playing. As soon as I hit a key, it is going to have that delay, which happens to be 10 milliseconds. Let's just turn it up to say 37 milliseconds. So again, as soon as I push it down, that's going to be 37 milliseconds. But the next key is instant, and the next key is instant, and the next key is instant. What this is designed for is if I came along and played this chord like this. Because sometimes when you're playing the keyboard, you don't necessarily hit all the keys at exactly the same time. There is a slight delay in the pressure that you can be putting on the keys, especially with this mini keyboard here, because I'm not sitting correctly, and my my hands are all a little bit wonky, and it's a bit like saying if I roll my hand. Well, what this does is it will pause and delay everything while it's taking all the other keys in. So as long as I played all the other keys, in this particular case within 37 milliseconds, it doesn't do anything, and then it'll output everything in the correct order. So as I say, if you think about it, if I was to roll my hand that way round, so I'm going to go from this note here, which happens to be now saying it's the lowest note, then that one there, well, that high note's now gone down there, then this one here, now I swapped them around, and then that one there again. So now we've got my low note, my second lowest note, and then my high note. So it swapped them around, but obviously if I was to do that and I've got this, when it comes to actually send the gate out, it's going to send the gate out just once in a nice clean fashion. So that's really what that's for, is to try and help you just to tidy things up. If you're getting your chord from another device, you'd find that it's probably absolutely bang on, and all the notes are going to come in at exactly the same time, so it's not going to be a problem. But yeah, just bear that in mind, that could just help tidy things up. Now, one of the reasons maybe I haven't really gone into why I love the spread mode so much is because it is always going to be, in this particular case, the bass note is always going to come out the top, and the lead or the highest note is always going to come out the bottom. So a lot of the time, if I say I was playing a 3-note chord, especially in this other mode at the top, where I've got, say, 3 ports, 3 ports, 3 ports, and then I was to add a 4th note in, well, then it'd be 4 ports. Well, this way here, these 2 ports are staying the same. So I've got my lead and my bass, they've stayed solidly the same. They haven't moved at all. The next key, it's not really moving. It's always going to be this port here. Now, if I was to add an odd 4th note in, I could say, well, that's my odd 4th note. Whereas, as I say, in the other modes, you are sort of shifting up and down a bit. So it's just to bear that in mind. As I say, we can just click and scroll this to say how many ports we want. We can go up to 16 or we can go down to 8. We can actually even go lower than the actual number of voices, or it uses the word voices. I must admit, I don't like the word voices because we're not really talking about voices at this stage. We're talking about this particular figure here. They do refer to it as number of voices. Yeah, okay. I like to think of it, because this is a signal coming in rather than an audio signal. It's more of a CV signal, because we're controlling things with an actual bit of CV, and then we're going to obviously go and get some audio afterwards. The way to think of this, because I've had some people ask me saying, oh look, I've only got like 8 voices. Is that what only voltage modular supports, up to 16 voices? And the answer is no. That's purely to do with the poly cables only. It's got nothing to do with the amount of voices you can actually produce within voltage modular. The way I look at this, and I explain it to people, this cable here has got 16 wires in it, and actually we've only got 6 active. So whenever we change this up here, it happens to change this value down here, just for saves you having to scroll around, but you can't change anything here. It's display only. It's just letting you know. So we can actually have less ports than you've actually got physical ports. Obviously, think about what you're doing there, because if I was to hold down 7 keys, well, I've lost 2 because I've only got 5 outputs, you know. And then obviously I can have more output ports than I've got input ports. And when you're in round robin and the random mode, that starts to make more sense. Doesn't make so much sense when you're in some of the other modes, because of the way they're working, and you know, vice versa. If you're this mode, we're going to lose notes. Well, you may not necessarily hold down all 7 keys. You may only hold down 4 and then play something else. And the way the poly stuff comes in, well, it's going to manage whatever you're trying to do. So yeah, you can have more than one than the other. Reset is just if you suddenly get yourself some hung notes, which you can do by disconnecting and connecting things live. You could end up with some odd gates going on. Hopefully I manage that internally so you don't get to see that, but just in case you did, that's really what the reset's purely for. Just in case, I say, you're doing funny wiring whilst things are live, you know. You should always make sure, well, I say make sure, you know, even in the real world, we're careful about how we wire things in and up when we're actually running stuff live and expect to have some funnies. So yeah, so that's just to help sort them funnies out. So that is the poly breakabout, starting to waffle. So thank you for watching, and bye for now.